hospital that was established was down in New York to help with injured soldiers. That was the very first one. And what's interesting, when I said after that, in 1751, 87 years later, we have the Church of Philadelphia, Hospital of Philadelphia Hospital. And so that was the very beginning. I found this very, very interesting. So I wanted to, being I dove a little deeper back to this 1663 in New York, I wanted to know why and who had this brainstorm that we need a hospital. And I thought, like probably most of you, that they had to have hospitals of some sort before that. But I don't think so. I think they had doctors, and most of the people in the Old Testament actually went to their pastor. They went to the rabbi. It's just, take and go to the rabbi, get the laying on of hands if you were sick. Before you went to the doctor, you were supposed to go to church, so to speak. And it's very, very interesting in this study. But it was started by a church and its community. Okay, so when you think of the word hospital, or you think of SRQ, or wherever we're going to hospital, that whole concept of caring for somebody began because of a church and a community that wanted to reach the needs of the people. Isn't that neat? The word hospital originates from the Latin word hospice, meaning guest or stranger. And speaking of guest or stranger, the word patior, from which we get the word patient, actually means to suffer. I share this because in putting these pieces together, we come with an understanding or an interpretation that a hospital is a place for the suffering stranger to come. And there was no denying this in the study that that's what was before me as I kept laying out the pros and cons, that a hospital formed out of a church is a place where the suffering stranger come. And it hit me. All of a sudden I realized what Paul was talking about in our text here this morning. A place for the stranger to come and be comforted, to be made well, and made whole. I thought about the story of the Good Samaritan who finds this man, the stranger, lying almost dead on the side of the road, and he takes him and puts him in a local inn, allowing the man the time he needed to heal and regain his strength. I began to think about things like good intentions and waiting on God. I thought about the words of Jesus in Matthew 25:38. He says, when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothing and clothe you? He goes on to say in verse 40, he said, the king will reply, I tell you the truth. And the king here is Jesus. He's replying, he said, I will tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these, my brothers, you did for me. I began to think about all those who suffer today all around the world, the hurting, the forgotten, and everyone in between, our neighbors, our friends, co-workers, family, and some of what we call our lifetime strangers. There's the first time that phrase ever entered my mind. It was Friday morning, and the Lord says, I'm the lifetime strangers. I heard it loud and clear. And I asked, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what's a lifetime stranger? It sounds like an oxymoron, don't it? How could you be a lifetime stranger? And he said to me, very interesting, he said, that's the names we know of the people we don't. How powerful was that? Especially in church, within our culture that we know today. We know most each other's names, at least we should, but do we really know each other? Or do we avoid one another sometimes? I began to think that if the church is responsible for the creation of what we know today as hospital, if the church is responsible for the care and restoration of the stranger, then Paul was right. William Barclay was right as well, for he says that the church is really a place of healing. That's what he says. He says it's a place of healing. We'll get to that in a minute. A place to get well and to be made whole. In today's culture, we often are led to believe that church is just another place where people gather who are like-minded. We pick our churches based on the style. We pick churches based on worship content. We pick churches by who else attends. For some church is a place of getting lost. It sounds strange when you think that the church should be a place where the lost are found. But in many cases, some come to church to seek God, but to get lost. They don't want to be found. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to build relationships. A place that they really don't want to get to know anyone. And somehow we like it that way. Strange. We say that we have come for God, and our intent is to just make it all about God. I've heard that so many times. And so we disconnect ourselves from everything. I know because this was me at one time in my life. It was me and my wife. We were those kinds of people. We were afraid to get connected, but we so hungered for this relationship with God. But we didn't want anybody else to know our business. So we sat in the booth in the back in the corner in the dark, and we tried to hide, but take in this awesome God. Not wanting to get connected, just here for God, we'd say, nothing less, nothing more. Fortunately, being a musician, I couldn't hide. And it's either every building I walked into, being a local musician that played clubs or whatever the case might be, but somehow everybody knew that I played. And my first visit to every church is, hey, you playing next Sunday? So we found it very difficult to hide. It took years before I realized that I was doing church wrong. That my definition of church was tainted at best. And so I never, in those beginning years, we never got what we needed from church. Why? Because we didn't have an understanding, a clarity about the church. My greatest goal, or should I say our greatest goal, was to be accepted by people and loved by God. And yet in those early years in Christ were very, very lonely years. And I think some of you can feel that today. In your own life, you're saying, I've been a Christian for 15 years or 20 years, and yet in churches that I've been in, it's a lonely place. And I don't know, I hear from people a lot of time, I'm not being fed. I don't get that a lot here at Crossroads, but I hear from people, I need to change my church. I'm just not being fed. I get service people that come into our church all the time to fix different things around here, and they're like, wow, I need to stop going to church. I'm just not fed. I'm not happy. I don't know anybody. And I'm thinking to myself, not only was I there once in my life, but we're not being the church. If people are walking away saying these things, then we need to, some orange juice. Wake up. Go have a V8. Maybe that's what the church needs to market. A church brand of V8. Probably be a multi-billion-dollar brand out there, wouldn't it? Go to church, drink V8 first. You'll be awake for service. I don't know.
That sounds good to me.
I know what church is. I'm not saying that I didn't know what church is, but I know what church is on the outside. Sure, it's all about praising God, being thankful, grateful, forgiven, and set free. But if I'm going to be honest, in those early years, I didn't feel very free. I felt boxed in. I felt closed in. I felt like I was being forced to be somebody I wasn't. I put on a mask, and in all intentiveness became someone else, a person that I thought I needed to be. I missed the wealth of comfort and encouragement, the blessing of talking to and knowing people who had faced the struggles that I was currently facing. I missed that blessing of that relationship. People that had already been where I was at, did what I had done, faced the decisions that I was needing to make now. Instead, I woke up one day, I said, God, this isn't working. And my wife and I walked away from the church. So one day we realized that we had to be a part of a change, a part of a movement that went back to the early church when it was a place of healing. My call to ministry was because God called me to make church a place of healing. I love the history lesson that teaches me about how the church was at the beginning, and especially what we call a hospital today. And one of my favorite books, Jim and Casper Go to Church, written by church planner Jim Henderson and an atheist, believe it or not, Matt Casper. Matt found Jim on an eBay sales ad, if you've never read the book. He put an ad in the paper, I will pay you X amount of money, I will buy you every weekend for the next so many weekends or months till we do this thing. And Matt answered the ad and took the money. As an atheist, he was purchased on eBay to go to church. That's what the book is about. It's a true story. The goal was to attend churches and write about their experiences and awareness of what each church was doing. Now, some of the churches they went to, big, gigantic, very successful, worldly successful churches all over the place. You say, well, did they go to Williamsburg? Yeah, they went there. Did they go to the big church out there in Texas and California? Yes, they went there. Saddleback, all of them. They're listed in the book.
Excuse me, Bob. Guess what? He's my cousin.
Not now.
No, he's my cousin, the one you read about.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All the big churches, but they also went to some little churches. And there's one part that I thought of within the text of today of creating a place of healing. And what the church represents was this place. I'm not going to tell you where it's at, but I know there's a mega church and 10 minutes away from a little church. Okay? A church of 5,000 or 6,000 next to a church of about 500, 400 or 500. 10 minutes away. Well, they went to the big church first that morning, and they said, well, let's go real quick. Now, Jim knew where they were going, but Matt didn't. And so they ended up getting lost. They could not find the church. He let Matt drive, because part of this experience of going to church is let's find it. How many people tell me they drive down 41 and they, where's your church? Oh my God, I passed that 100 times. I never realized that was a church. What threw you off, Ross? The sign off on it? I don't know. Okay, but the point is, these are valid things when we talk about evangelism and making the church an inviting place. Well, they couldn't find the church, so they come across this one building, and he said, that's got to be the church. Look at it, it's beautiful. They pull up, and it's a dental center, dental care center. So he drives a little bit further. He said, look at that, there's a great little building right there. So they pull in, they find out that it's a community child care center. He's like, holy cow. So they go down a little further, and they come across this another beautiful building, even 3 times the size. Now remember, they just came out of a huge church. So their mind is saying, this church has got to be big. That's what Matt's thinking. So they come to this really big building, and it turns out it's a healthcare center. They pull over the side of the road, and Jim says in the book, he's trying not to laugh, but Matt's lost. He doesn't know where to go. He's looking at the direction. He's trying to find the church. And if it wasn't for people coming out of the first service at that time, he would have missed it. It looked like an old warehouse across the street. A run-down building. And so they ended up making church on time. And they walked into what appeared to be a warehouse with the original bricks on the wall and wood on the roof and the ceiling. They were used chairs just spread out in a half circle, and like what we have here, and a small little stage area. And that was church. He found out later on that the church built the dental center. The church built and ran and run the child care center. The church built and run the health care center. The church put more money into community than they did into their own building. Why? Because they wanted to be the goal. Pastor Gordon, they called him coach. Not pastor, they called him coach. So he was a pastor. They called him coach because he used to coach at the school first. They called him coach. He wanted the church to be a true community church. He said, we call ourselves a community church, but all we do is invite people to be like us. He said, if a church that is in a community, if it doesn't know the needs of the community, it's not a community church. It's simply a church. But if a church wants to be a community church, and if it wants to be the hands and feet of Christ, which every church should be, then that church should be able to identify with the needs that are in their community. They started this, believe it or not, and I had to laugh when I read it again. Maybe that's where I got the idea years ago when I read the book. But for the longest time, I wanted to do something here at Crossroads. And it has to do with this story. I'm going to tell you about it afterwards. But it's something that we actually can do. But that's the story of Jim and Matt going to church, is to define what a real community church is. There's a couple of things that Jim goes on to say. He says, so many times in our efforts of evangelism, we limit ourselves to the years of Jesus, the last years of Jesus' life. We like to evangelize by talking about his pain and suffering and in our sin. We like to talk about his crucifixion and even his resurrection. He says we skip right to Calvary and resurrection. And so the question he asks is this: did the early years of Jesus teach us anything? Okay? He writes, the final ministry years are the tip of the incarnation, the visible interaction of humanity and divinity. But the first 30 years are just as vital to understanding what God looks like when he is living a life more like the one we live. That's pretty powerful. He goes on to say, Jim's point is that we need to lead in weakness. We need to be weak and focused not on necessarily becoming better or stronger, but our strength is always in God. And the biblical truth is that when we're weak, we're strong. And that's what we need. We need God to be working through us in strength, not trying to become stronger. Because I tell you, I've witnessed over and over again. I've watched friends go from not having money to having a lot of money. And almost 99% of the time, I watch their faith walk decrease. Why? I don't know what it is mentally for us. But sometimes, if we can handle it ourselves, we don't need God. And we're missing the point of what that relationship is about. God is not simply a vending machine that he answers our needs, and that's why we need him in our lives. But we sometimes treat him, and church does the same thing. We're trying to meet people's needs by figuring this out sometimes by our own intellect, instead of hitting our knees and saying, God, what do you want us to do? And I've preached on this before. We go ahead and we watch what we believe are successful churches, and we want to duplicate what they're doing. Are we saying, God, we can't hear you? Are we saying, God, don't tell us something different? We have an example to follow. So we're really not going to worry about what you're saying. We're just going to do what they're doing. And I sometimes wonder if God just sits up there in heaven and looks down on us and says, what are you doing? I have a purpose for you. Not only as a church, but each individual in the church. I have a plan for your life. I've created you for a reason. Please learn to hear my voice. Please build that relationship with me that we can work together. Jim's point is that we should be leading in weakness. We should not be pretending to be something we're not, but moving and praying in the direction for which we were created. And as Paul says in our text here today, it is to enlarge the house. By comforting and encouraging one another. That's how you enlarge the house. In doing so, we not only enlarge our house, us, this temple where God lives, we mature in our faith. We're also strengthening and enlarging his house, the church, to which Christ is the head, into becoming a place of healing. Did you know that the words comfort in our text mean to call near? And Paul is saying, we're not to walk up to one another and pat one another's shoulders and say, you're doing good. We're not supposed to walk around and say, give me a hug. Come to church. We're loving you. It's not what he's saying. Comfort means to invite. Comfort means that you're involved and you care about that person's life. That's what it means. It's a call near. Same thing, the word edify. I was blown away. But in this context, the word edify is a different word than it is in some other places. And that's the problem sometimes with our English language. When you go into the Greek, we have one word that means whatever we want it to mean in whatever situation. We can manipulate that word in the English language. But in the Greek, you can't manipulate it because they might have 10 ways that they could use the word edify. But you know what the edify means here? When Paul says, I want you to comfort and edify one another. I'll paraphrase it. I want you to call near and build the house. That's what it means. The word edify means a house builder. In this text, you're to comfort and get your butt busy building. Paul's saying? To encourage and build the house. How? Well, it takes the rest of the scripture to answer how. But I think it's very clear that God's house should be a place of healing. All should be welcome regardless of what they've been through, what they've done, what they look like, how they smell, or anything else. That door is an invitation to come here to be with God, no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or any other situation in your life. This is the goal of God's church. The life and power that is alive in God's church is for the purpose of transforming our lives. And to that end, Paul is saying to us that you and I are called to be house builders. Sometimes we're afraid of the word evangelism, and people say, I don't want to share Christ. That's not me. I don't want to do it. Well, you know, maybe we've misinterpreted the Bible. You know, and I thought about that Friday afternoon as I sat there with tears rolling down my face, and I said, Lord, how much easier is this message to preach and to encourage and to lift people up, to become house builder, than it is to say to somebody, go and share your faith. And how much more powerful is it to build a house where all people are welcome? Another thing which evangelism doesn't do, a lot of times evangelism justifies who we are and not who the people are. Sometimes in our evangelism, we so much want people to be like us or to be like the mold that we think is right, that we forget we're not God. We don't have a right to judge people. The only right God gave us was to love one another. You and I are called to be house builders. We are called to enlarge His house. Who wants to do that? That's it. That was very weak. Just saying. That was very weak. Hopefully every one of us wants to be a part of building God's house. And making this into a place of healing.
This is God's world.
I sat, after going over this, most of Friday, couldn't get it off my mind. I was a daydreamer most of yesterday, couldn't get it off my mind. And I said to the Lord, you know, there's something I wanted to do when I first got here. It never came to fruition. And I said, now I'm thinking, maybe it needs to happen. Real quick, I'll tell you about some of my hopes and dreams when God sent me to this church. One of my prayers had been, and I had went over several times and laid hand on the melody. And I said to God, the church should own that building. Many times I've walked the vacant lot out here. My wife will tell you, laid hands on trees and everything else on the ground over there. In fact, I had bent down and kissed the soil over there, asking God to turn it into a 10 or 12 room starter home to take people off the streets.
How much money do you need? I'll get with you later.
Okay, but just all these different things were dreams. You know, I used to have people come up, Pastor, we got hold of your feet, we're keeping you on the ground. Sometimes I'm sorry that they pulled me back to earth. I liked living in that place and believing that God was bigger than anything, that I could dream big. But one of the things I thought that we can do to start here, and we have to research it to find out. We have to go knock on doors and say, hey, would this be a blessing to you? Hey, would this be a blessing to you? I talked to Dave yesterday, and he let me know right off the bat, doing laundry is expensive. How many people here have to go to a laundromat? How many people do you think in our community need a laundromat? What's a lot? 100 people? 100 families?
100,000.
More than that?
More than that, by Walmart's constantly packed. How about millions and millions?
What does it cost for a family of 3 or 4 to go to a laundromat?
A lot of money.
$40 a month?
Just myself, let's get it right.
$25 a week. That's $100 a month. For how many people?
Just me and 4.
Yeah.
Just
Okay, this is an expensive thing. Dan, you've been there. How expensive?
It's very expensive.
And what happens is you end up doing laundry because you have to be clean to go to work. Because if you're not clean to go to work, you don't have a job. You don't have a job, you don't have money, you can't pay rent. You've got no place to live. It's a vicious circle. I know it sounds like something menial, but I've got a garage sitting over there that's packed with stuff we never look at. I've been here for over 9 years, and what we have is simply a garage that we cannot use, filled with stuff we'll never use.
Why don't you bring it next week?
Why, or can't we pray over the next couple of weeks, and maybe even raise the money that we need to do to turn that garage, and raise up somebody here, give them the key to the garage, and say, you're in charge of this. To where the church would put out soap powder, softener, and we could put 2 washers and 2 dryers over there, and we can open 3 mornings a week for the community to come in at no charge. What would it cost the church in water to do that? Nothing practically. What a service could we be to meeting the needs of our community in something as simple as putting in a free laundromat?
Exactly. Well, look how
I wouldn't do this in Labor Ranch. But right here,
it's needed.
folks, I need your help. I mean, I'm not the church, you are. And I'm trying to come up with fresh ideas, praying all the time, and going through this study this week on this message of enlarging God's house. I realize that the only way we're going to do this is to build relationships with people who, for the most part, don't want to go to church. So either the church has to become a shining light in their life in some way to represent the love of Christ, to meet a need that is valid and real in their lives, is what we have to do. Would you agree?
Yes.
I think if we could find and meet the needs within our community, that our church could be a house of healing, whether it be for doing laundry or eating on Tuesday and Thursday nights, a free meal, whatever it might be. But if we don't value what God values most, and that's people, this church will close.
Exactly. Preach, Pastor, preach. Good preaching.
This church will close. And the only fault would be on our own.
It's true.
But the problem is, God has to touch our hearts, folks. We have to become passionate about these things. We have to look at people and be hurt. We have to look at people, and our very beings have to ache and say, God, I can't watch this anymore. You know, most of the prophets weren't great people. David wasn't a great man. As a matter of fact, he failed all the time. But you know what David had that many of us don't have?
Love.
He had a broken heart for hurting. David had a heart after God. And as selfish as he was and self-centered, he really wanted to do the right thing. And that's all I'm asking. I'm not asking perfect people to get up. I'm asking people to come forward and say, I would like to take responsibility. I would like to help raise money to do this. I would help to be a part of the visionary process that puts this together. I want to be a person, pastor, that sits with you and we go over things that never been done before. I want to sit and think about new ways to do things that we can reach the people of this community. Can you do that?
Yes, I can.
Well, you're going to California.
Well, I'll be back.
Okay. Well, when you go back, you come and see me.
Okay. I'll make the room for you.
Love your heart. Love your heart. I'm trying to preach. I'm trying to be easy. I'm trying to be tough. I'm trying to be loving. I care about you. I care about this community. I care about this church. We have a wonderful, wonderful mom and dad called United Methodist Church that believes in us. And they have been helping to forge ways for us to stay open and give us money. They've been doing it for over 9 years. You know, in my house, my dad's house growing up, you know what he would tell me about by that time? Time to get a job. This church needs a job. We need to start paving our own way. We need to start working towards becoming independent on our own. I don't mean independent from the Methodists, but in our bill paying, in our responsibilities. We need to become a mature church that is growing in our faith, that is doing good things. We should be leaving this building so excited about what God is doing. Those are the things that excite people to come to church. Who wants to evangelize if you feel like nothing's going on in your church? But all of a sudden you're a part of something that's exciting. You're going to go and say, gosh, you see what we're doing in our church? Father God, I thank you for this message here today. I thank you, Lord, for the pressures in my own life bringing me to this point, to where I understand what this is about. to some degree. Father, I ask for your Spirit to move. For by your Spirit, you can transform not only our lives, but this church and this community.
I understand about
So,
what
I'm praying.
property next door or life church. You're welcome.
Yep. And so, Father God, we're leaning on you right now. If we for one moment think we're going to step forward and it's going to be in our strength, or the woman said, in our money, it's only going to go so far. What we need is a commitment to you, for you will be our great provider ultimately. You're the one that's going to put the commitment in our hearts to stay and go the distance. You can't despise small beginnings. But Lord, I believe with all my heart you want to do an amazing work in this church, in this area, that brings glory to your name and fills your ultimate table. So Father God, please work. Pour out on this church. Pour out on these people. In Jesus' name. Amen.